lost objective Charlie.
Time to take it back!
All right, the British Enfield SMLE MKIII, or as it's known in the game Battlefield 1, the SMLE MKIII Infantry. And in Battlefield 1, the guys that have played it, you notice that there's a few different variations of this gun in the game, the SMLE MKIII. But since I happen to own one that is an actual real version of the MKIII Infantry model in the game, that was actually probably used in World War I, since this gun was made in 1917. I thought, hey, maybe I'll get this thing out and kind of show you guys the differences between the real gun and maybe a little bit about how it was used in World War I versus how the gun is actually portrayed in Battlefield 1, which, you know, I'll go ahead and say they did an amazing job with that. I was very impressed with that when I started playing the game. Well, one, the graphics are amazing in that game, and just the detail that they were able to capture of this firearm in that game is amazing. It really is. But before I get started with that, I want to remind you guys to check out the people who support this channel, SDI, the Sonoran Desert Institute. You can check them out at sdi.edu, and also Federal Ammo. We're going to be shooting some Federal Ammo today. Appreciate them. Which, speaking of that, this gun fires the round 303 British, and that's not really something that's dealt with in the game at all, but you might find that interesting if you don't know anything about this gun. So I'll start with the biggest difference. The biggest difference that I've noticed in Battlefield 1, the portrayal of this gun versus the real life gun, is that this gun, it does what's called cock on close. So with the Mauser action, which those of you who know guns would be familiar with, so like, for example, let's say, and I'll explain why I'm pulling the trigger as I put the bolt down in just a second. So on a Mauser, if I've just fired a round, bam, and it's time to pull the bolt back and then put in the chamber a new round, when I pull it up the first time, that's where it cocks. It cocks right there, and I pull it back, push it forward, new rounds in, and I'm ready to fire. But on the British Enfield, the MKIII, it doesn't cock until you go to rechamber the round, and as you're pushing that bolt forward, you can see this piece right here stays in the same spot, and there's a little spring tension right there, and you go down, and that's effectively the hammer right there. As I pull the trigger, that goes down. So that's one of the big things that they missed in the game. If you play the game, you'll notice that when you are cycling the action, it looks more, well, it's kind of hard to, let me bring it over here and show you. So when you see this gun's unloaded, and of course it's pointed down range, so it wouldn't matter if it was. When you're playing the game and you see the action being worked, it looks more like this. That's kind of what you see from that first person view, but in reality, it looks like this. You should be able to see a gap there where it's cocked, and then when it's fired, that goes down. So that's something that they missed in the game, but not a big thing. Not a big thing. They may have been aware of it, but then realized that it was going to require, I don't know, too much to try to accomplish that. So that's one of the big ones that's different. Guys, getting close up on that bug there. So I can blast him. I won't do that. Another one is, well, I'll mention something that's the same. So this rifle holds 10 rounds. You can see I've got two 5-round clips here. That is the correct term for these. These are clips, not magazines. This is the magazine of the firearm, of the rifle. It holds 10 rounds, and that's something they accurately depicted in the game. It does hold 2 rounds, and the loading animation in the game looks pretty spot on. I'll go ahead and load it. So when you're playing the game and you've run the magazine dry, you fired all 10 rounds, you'll see the guy, he'll present a clip, he'll pop it in there like that, push it down, and then I forget whether he throws it out or it falls out. Put the other one in, goes down like that, and then you've got 10 rounds. I'll go ahead and fire a few. Let's see, I'm gonna go for the red plate up there on the left. one of the advantages of the cock on close in this rifle is that you're supposed to be able to work the action more effectively while keeping your sights somewhat on target. They're still going to get disrupted, but more keeping like the same hold, because where before if it cocks, if all the pressure is when you make that motion, then you have to use a lot of strength and kind of jerk the rifle that way like you would on the Mauser. But on this, all the pressure is when I'm pushing it forward like that. And you can see in the game that they pretty accurately depict the motion of the rifle. You can watch how I'm moving this rifle as I work the action. We got it pretty close. Now, this thing is very old, 100 years old actually, and almost exactly. So it doesn't throw the brass out very far or anything. Another thing that they missed, which I'm guessing is probably something that was probably a good idea for them to change about this rifle for the game, is the cutout in the rear sight. And the real rifle is very small. And if you'll notice in the game, it's it's pretty generous. So you can see that front sight really easily. But on this gun, you have to really take a fine bead to get that front sight right in that little cutout. Take a couple more shots. Going right through the bottom of it. All right. So those are a couple of things that are different. One thing too, this round in general, the 303 British, is really kind of the more underpowered of the rifle calibers of the time, like the 8mm that the Mauser fired, 30-06 that the 03 Springfield fired. What else? Those are a couple of the big ones. It's not dramatically underpowered or anything. For the most part, you may not even notice a difference, but in the game, the Scout class rifles typically are, well, I forget, there's a bunch of them in that class, but the sniper rifles in the game tend to have kind of the maximum amount of damage that they do, and that's what the Mark III Infantry does, the maximum amount of advantage, even though damage, even though it doesn't have the scope on it. And it's about the same as the G98, which is sitting over there, which this round is actually a little bit less powerful than the 8mm, but again, it's not a huge difference, I wouldn't say. Another thing I've noticed that in the game, if let's say you fire all but 3 rounds, so you have 3 rounds left in the magazine, and you go to reload, typically what the guy will do is the German or the American or whoever you're playing as, he will pop a clip in, and then after he puts the clip in, then he'll have loose ammo and put the rest in. And that's something that I thought was kind of interesting, which I guess that would probably be the best way to do it, but I would think at the time they might have only loaded clips. So one way they might do it is just go ahead and just put 5 more in and then just shoot until those are empty. Or they might put a fresh clip in and then start to put another one in and just push it down as far as it would go and then just kind of pull the rest out. So I don't know if they actually would carry loose ammo around with them or not, but that's one thing that I kind of thought of that was kind of interesting. The clips do seem to be pretty close to, to the ones that you see in the game with the little holes on the side and everything, so that seems to be pretty accurate. One thing, in Battlefield 1, there are a lot of submachine guns and semi-automatics, which, as some of you may know, were not necessarily very common at all during World War I. So if you're actually playing the game with this rifle, it has some amount of disadvantage because you have a bolt action going up against machine guns and submachine guns and stuff like that. The amount of damage that it does in the game sort of counters that a little bit if you're smart about how you use it. But in real life, in the actual war, this gun would have been pretty advantageous because basically everybody had a bolt action, but most of those only held 5 rounds, and you've got 10, so that's some advantage. Still takes just as long to load it, but that is a little bit of an advantage. Let's shoot a few more of them. One thing you have to watch out for these where it's a rimmed case, you have to make sure you don't get what's called rim lock. So when you're loading it, you have to make sure that first round, that the second round that you put in, the rim goes right up to it and not over it, like that. Basically, I'll show you on the table here. So like if that's the first round, you got to make sure the second one is like that. If it sits like this, then it might get locked up and the gun won't function properly. So if you're playing Battlefield 1, their gun doesn't work, could be because of that. I think it would drive everybody crazy if they made games that realistic. That's another thing too, if for some reason you were in World War I and a bunch of people had submachine guns from the era, and you had one of these, not necessarily as outmatched as you might be in the game, because the World War I era semi-automatics and especially machine guns were not known to be reliable at all. So they would have had all kinds of malfunctions to deal with, and you probably wouldn't. Bolt guns do tend to be pretty reliable. Okay, let's try some more of the red plates. I'm gonna try the red plate in the middle over there. Take a fine bead of this thing. Couldn't tell where that went. I'm trying the other one now on the right. Alright. Let's see how many rounds I have left. Got about 4, something like that. That's another thing in the game. All the weapons in Battlefield 1 have a ceiling on the rate of fire, and it's even listed over there when you select the gun. And I think I disagree with the, because it depends on the skill level of the person shooting it, I guess, and they try to base it on kind of the average skill level. But on some of them, I kind of disagree. Like the 1911 should be able to shoot faster, I think, in that game, and some of the others. But on the Mark III and the SMLE Mark III, it seems about right. I'm gonna shoot some as fast as I can and see how they compare. Just gonna shoot into that barrel there. So I think that's probably not, if it's any faster than the game, it's not a whole lot faster. But all in all, very impressed with how they depict this firearm in the game, and it's a lot of fun. It's neat to get to experience a lot of World War I weapons that we've not really seen a lot in video games. And there's a lot in there that I've never had my hands on, just because they're rare, hard to find, or just very expensive, very collectible, you know, and stuff like that. And it's neat to, you know, I've got one of these in real life. I have the real thing, and also getting to play with it in the video game. It's pretty neat. It's a lot of fun. So anyways, I hope that kind of scratched the itch for some of you to kind of understand what the difference might be in the way this thing is depicted in the game versus the real thing. But anyways, I had a lot of fun shooting this thing today, and I'll catch you guys next time.